Time to move on to Fayetteville, Arkansas to talk about the Arkansas Razorbacks. And, well, Sam Pittman's group fell in a pit last season. I don't think anyone expected Arkansas to be where they were last season. It was a huge drop off for this program, and a lot of people are talking like Sam Pittman may not last too much longer. This is the year that Sam Pittman and Arkansas have to make a rebound with KJ Jefferson gone, Tailon Green coming in. Can Arkansas rebound in the SEC in 2024? You're about to find out what I think here in this video. What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. I want to welcome you to my channel and welcome you back to prediction season. Whether this is the first video of mine you're watching, or hey, you've kept up with predictions all the way through this point, you got to know by now I'm predicting all 134 FBS level college football teams this summer. Means I'm doing your favorite team. Whether you're a Hog fan or not, I encourage you hit the subscribe button and ring the bell. You got to know when I upload predictions, as hey, we're almost halfway done with predictions at this point. Thank you so much for watching this video. Help support my channel in more ways you can even imagine. Continue to support the channel by interacting with it in any way you can, liking, commenting, sharing, watching my other videos, subscribing, literally anything, because it helps support the channel. Does mean a lot to me. Let's talk about the Hogs. Woo pig in 2024. How do we talk about teams in 2024? Or at least leading into it? Well, we're going to take a deep dive into the team's offense, dive into the defense, and then at the end of the video, we'll go through the schedule, give it a game-by-game preview and prediction. But I got to mention a couple things first, because right over here are going to be the stats the team put up either offensively or defensively last season. And, of course, for your viewing pleasure, right below the team's logo, I have put the team's coaching staff. And with no further delay, let's talk about this Arkansas offense last season. It was led by KJ Jefferson. He has since found a home with a new program in the Central Florida Knights. Last season for Jefferson, 2,107 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 8 picks. It definitely was a drop-off from where KJ Jefferson has seen to be played in the past. I mean, 2021 and 2022 were some fantastic seasons for him. Last season, not so much. He was, however, the team's leading rusher as well, 414 yards and 2 touchdowns. This just overall is a team that struggled to find a good offensive rhythm last season. You also are going to be losing Jacoby Criswell, who is going back to North Carolina. So what does that mean? Well, Malachi Singleton is a returner in this group, and you do get a highly touted freshman in KJ Jackson coming into this program. And Blake Boda comes in to try to compete for that starting quarterback role. He's a Coastal Carolina transfer. However, the guy that everyone, including myself, is projecting to be that starter, it's the guy you saw on the thumbnail screen just a little bit ago. It is Tailon Green coming over from Boise State. We'll go through his stats as a Bronco. Last season, okay, so before I go with stats, Tailon Green was the guy that came into the Boise State program with high expectations, and he didn't really live up to them. Only 2,000 yards in 2022, only 1,700 yards last season. His touchdown to interception ratio numbers have just not been as good as they would have liked it to be, and he's not a guy that's going to throw the football a whole ton. However, you go back to his past 2 games that he played at Boise State, he went 13 for 17 against Air Force. He went 12 of 15 against UNLV in the conference championship game. Look, Tailon Green is a guy that we have seen the high upside play out. KJ Jefferson was a guy that also had a high upside, and we just didn't see it play out. Tailon Green, kind of a similar player to KJ Jefferson. He is going to get outside of the pocket and run some here as well as last season. Did have 439 rushing yards in 2022, had 586 rushing yards, 10 touchdowns in 22, 9 touchdowns in 23. Very similar player to KJ Jefferson. You could argue he's a little bit more athletic than KJ, but the expectations remain the same. He's got to up his game. He's got to play at a consistent level for this Arkansas offense to be better than it was last season. Guys that are going to be leaving through the portal in the running back room, well, Rocket Sanders is gone. The huge piece in this Arkansas running back room that didn't really have a great season last year, only 3.4 yards per carry. I do believe this is the running back room that overall was a little bit banged up, but again, Rocket Sanders, extremely talented player, has found himself a new home. He's going over to play for the South Carolina Gamecocks. You have A.J. Green, who's gone over to Oklahoma State, Isaiah Augustave, who's gone over to Colorado, and Dominique Johnson, who has gone over to TCU. All of those guys leave this running back room. And behind KJ Jefferson, you had AJ Green as your second, Sanders as your fourth, and Augustave as your fifth leading rusher. Well, I notice I didn't say your third because your third leading rusher comes back. That was Rashad Dubinion from last season, had 260 yards and one touchdown. You do get some guys coming in through the transfer portal, though, that could play some pretty big minutes, including Jaquindon Jackson, a former Utah Ute that I think is a really, really good running back, and coming in here to this season might be the number one running back for the Arkansas Razorbacks in 2024, and Rodney Hill comes over from Florida A&M. There are no notable losses in this wide receiver or tight end room, at least that I can find, so you get pretty much everybody back. Andrew Armstrong, Isaac Tesla, Jane Wilson, Tyrone Broden, and Isaiah Sategna will be back in this wide receiver room, as well as a transfer in Jordan Anthony. He is coming over from Texas at A&M. You are getting some other transfers in, such as Coffrey Brown coming over from South Florida. But again, Jordan Anthony, the most notable one there. Obviously, you return everyone in the tight end room: Luke Haas, Ty Washington, Varquise Gums, and a transfer comes in there as well. Andreas Posky is coming over from Eastern Michigan. So again, who knows how much those transfers are going to play, especially with everyone coming back in both respective rooms. But as long as Tailon Green can develop and up his passing level game, it's not like Tailon Green didn't have weapons over there with the Boise State Broncos. He did. If Tailon Green can continue that role, and if he can utilize these wide receivers well, you got the talent to do it again. Pretty much everyone comes back, as well as some transfers come in to give it some depth. On the offensive line, Bo Limmer and Brady Latham are both gone to the NFL, while Andrew Chambly and Devon Manuel are gone through the transfer portal. So your offensive line room looks like this: Joshua Brown, Patrick Kutas, Tykees Crawford, Amari Wiggins, as well as some guys through the portal: Keyshawn Blackstock, Joe Moore, Addison Nichols, and Fernando Carmona all come in through the portal. Combination of those 8 guys probably end up being your starting offensive line for the Razorbacks here in 2024. So when you talk about this offense, again, much like the conversation with KJ Jefferson last year, stay healthy and improve your play. Again, KJ Jefferson had very, very good seasons in 21 and 2022. Tailon Green has fallen below expectations, right? KJ Jefferson fell below expectations last year. Tailon Green fell below expectations last year. Both of them, in their own respective ways, have different levels of injury problems. Stay healthy, develop your play. You got a good group of running backs. You got a good group of wide receivers. If they can fill in the gaps on this offensive line, which, let's be honest, was not very good last season. They gave up 47 sacks. They didn't help the run game out much. So yes, as much as it is about Tailon Green taking that next step, offensive line has got to get better, and the skill position guys got to step up and play some bigger roles for the Razorbacks here in 2024. Defensively, though, and by the way, Bobby Petrino coming back to Arkansas, not to be the head coach, but now to be the offensive coordinator. We'll see how that works out here with this program as well. After a quick water break, I'll tell you about the defense. Make sure you stay hydrated out there. Water is important. Defensive line, linebacker room, cornerback room, safety room. Look, you just lose a lot of guys in pretty much every position. None more notable than the defensive line room. And by the way, every position that you see on screen is going to have some people playing on Sundays, because there were a lot of talented defensive pieces. It was not a bad defense last year for Arkansas. Yes, it maybe gave up a little too many points, but overall, I mean, again, you're taking a look at the stats on screen right now. Not a terrible defense by any means, but again, they didn't necessarily come through in the biggest moments. Defensive line. Let's talk about it. Trahan Jeffcoat, Rohe Stona, and John Morgan III. All of them you will see now playing on Sundays, because all of them really big pieces to this defensive line last season. Jeffcoat had 4 sacks last season. Morgan had 2 sacks. And then you do lose some guys to the transfer portal as well. Anthony Booker is going to be gone. Last season, he had 19 tackles. And Torian Carter, 25 tackles, a sack and a half last season. One of the more leading tacklers on the defensive line last season are gone. But speaking of leading tacklers on the defensive line, you get your leading tackler on the defensive line back. Sorry for the redundancy in what I said. 44 tackles, 6.5 sacks. Tack on a pass defended, led the team in sacks, was the highest leading tackling defensive line, as I've said many times. It's Landon Jackson. You pair him with Cameron Ball, Eric Gregory, Kiwi Rose, and Nico de Villiers, and I probably butchered that last name, so I apologize. While you do get some guys coming in through the portal, such as Anton Junkaj, again, probably butchered that last name, and Denny Sally. So both of those guys coming in through the portal to give this defensive line some depth. And again, I apologize for any names that I butchered. I probably butchered 3 of them right there. So again, I apologize. Antonio Greer is going to be gone through the linebacker room. Antonio Greer Jr. technically, not 63. I'm flipping numbers around here. 36 tackles last season, but a lot more notable names are gone through the transfer portal, including your 2 leading tacklers. Jaheim Thomas had 90 tackles, 3.5 sacks, 2 pass defended, while Chris Paul Jr. 74 tackles, 2 sacks, and a pass defended for him last season. And Jordan Crook going to be gone out of the room as well. He had a solid season last year, 28 tackles, 1 sack, and again, all of those guys gone through the transfer portal. If you want to know where they're going, well, I'll tell you where the top 2 tacklers from last season are going. Chris Paul, he's going to go join Lane Kiffin's group in Ole Miss, and Jaheim Thomas has gone over to Wisconsin. Talking about the linebacker room and what's coming back, well, Brad Spence really the only notable returner here for this linebacker room. He had 16 tackles last year, so they're really building this linebacker room through the transfer portal. Xavier Sori is a great start to that. A 4-star rated transfer, according to 24/7, coming over from one of the best defensive programs in the country in the Georgia Bulldogs. Steven Dix is coming into this team as well. He's over from Marshall, a really talented player, and Larry Worth over from Jacksonville State. So some pretty good players coming into this linebacker room. Again, how do they gel with the system? That remains to be seen. You go ahead and you take a look what this defensive back room leaves. Well, again, it loses 2 really talented pieces, one in the cornerback room, one in the safety room. Dwight McLaughlin is gone. Again, you will see him playing on Sundays now. 20 tackles, 6 passes defended, tied for the team lead with 3 interceptions, and he was tied with now his former NFL, or I should say his new NFL counterpart, and Al Walcott. 2 passes defended, 3 tackles, or not 3 tackles, 3 interceptions, including a pick 6, and he's the team's 4th leading tackler with 56 tackles. You do lose a couple other guys through the transfer portal, such as Lorando Johnson, who is going to be leaving that cornerback room, 29 tackles for him and an interception last season, while Malik Chavez, who, while he was not a super notable player for the defense last year, did have 5 tackles, did have a sack last season, is a loss in the safety room nonetheless. So, defensive backs for Arkansas, what do you got this year? Jalen Braxton, Jaheim Singletary, and Keon Stewart. And then you got Stewart is spelled correctly now. They all come back, while Marquise Robinson is a piece coming in through the transfer portal. I'll tell you where he comes from in just a second. While I pull that up, let's talk about the safety room, because I got to talk about where a lot of their safety transfers come from. Doneco Slaughter, Anthony Switzer, Miguel Mitchell, they all transfer in this program to pair with Jaden Johnson, Hudson Clark, 2 very talented safeties, and TJ Metcalf, another talented piece that comes back in the safety room. Slaughter comes over from Tennessee. Marquise Robinson is coming over. That's the corner transfer, is coming over from South Alabama. Mitchell is coming over from Florida. You have Switzer coming over from Utah State. So some good talented pieces come into the defensive back room. And you got to talk about kickers because they're people too. Cam Little is gone to the NFL. Really good place kicker for the Razorbacks last season. Max Fletcher off through the portal. And you have to dive on into the portal to get your new kicker in Matthew Shipley, while Devin Bale back to do the primary punting duties. Again, not a bad defense for Arkansas last season, but it did lose a lot of talent and it lost a lot of guys that could come up big in the clutch. How do a lot of these portal pieces fit in, especially in that linebacker room? I'm going to be very curious to see how that works out. Overall, though, the defense probably will remain about relatively the same for Arkansas, at least statistically in 2024. It's more about the offense, though, to take that next step, especially when you have to go through this schedule with a ton of landmines on it. Yeah, it's not going to be a fun ride for Arkansas Razorbacks fans this year, especially if that offense can't get back up to standard. Well, let me make sure you know how the schedule works out. Any games at home will be underlined, while any game on the road will be in italics. For those of you out there who don't know what that is, that's that slanted text. Any game you see in green is going to be a game that I think the Razorbacks are going to win easily, much like their starting game on Thursday in Week 1 against Arkansas Pines Bluff. Should be able to win that one. Any game in yellow will be a close competitive game, but a game that I ultimately see the Razorbacks being able to win. And any game in red is a loss. Much like this game here against the Oklahoma State Cowboys, I do think you are going to lose that game on the road. Now, Oklahoma State, very, very talented team this season, especially if Alan Bowman can figure out the touchdown to interception ratio. They've got a lot of good talent, and Ollie Gordon is coming back. Now, I know that there is a lot of things going on with Ollie Gordon right now. DUI, he got arrested on suspicion of that. Who knows what the suspension and punishment is going to be, and it could mean that he misses out on this game right here against the Arkansas Razorbacks. But I think still, Ollie Gordon or not, whether these portal pieces are trying to gel, trying to fit into the system. It's a Razorback team that's going to play hard. Maybe Taylon Green is still trying to get used to things. You have to go on the road. You're going to play a really good defense in the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Mike Gundy's group is going to be one of the better sides in the Big 12 Conference this season. In Arkansas, Ollie Gordon or not, I do think we'll go on the road and lose that game to the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Then you got to come back home and play the UAB Blazers. And look, this should be more than a 14-point win for the Arkansas Razorbacks, as UAB was an okay team at times last year, but overall they just weren't that great. But I have this game highlighted in yellow, not because of the 1 to 13 point win. And while yes, that definitely is kind of the margin that I sort of use at times, this more of is a game to where I think Arkansas's got to watch out a little bit. UAB, still overall, historically speaking, have always been a very feisty team. And they've been a team that's not going to go down without a fight. And they've been that way ever since they've brought their football program back. UAB is going to be a very interesting team to watch here in 2024. I think it's going to be a better side than it was last season. But nonetheless, it should be a game that Arkansas does win to move on to 3-0. My apologies, a 2-1. More water again, stay hydrated. Then you get into SEC play, and look, this is just a really, really tough SEC schedule for the Arkansas Razorbacks, especially having to go on the road in Jordan-Hare Stadium and play the Auburn Tigers. Now, look, Auburn is a team here in 2024 that Hugh Freeze coming in there, I think is going to have this program building in the right direction. Auburn's got a hard schedule too, and this is the game that I could see Arkansas winning if it was at home. But because it's not at home, because you have to go on the road, because you have to play this Auburn team that I think is trending in the right direction, while Arkansas, again, is sort of trending downwards, I do think it's a spot where Arkansas is going to go on the road and lose to the Auburn Tigers. Now, Auburn still has questions. They got to figure out that passing game because it was nowhere to be seen last season. However, you still have a lot of really good defensive pieces, some good transfer portal pieces come in, and I think Arkansas will lose that game there on the road. I also think they're going to lose to Texas A&M Aggies because I think Mike Elko is rearing and ready to go. I think he's going to have a really good team this year, especially if Connor Weigman can take that next step to play the quarterback position really, really well, like a lot of people figure that he can. While this is the neutral site game in AT&T in Arlington, Texas, I just see Texas A&M as being the better team this season. I think they have a better talent, especially up front on that offensive line, where Arkansas really struggles. And I think that Texas A&M defensive line going to be able to take advantage of that Arkansas offensive line. And again, Connor Weigman taking that next step this year. That's a loss for me for the Arkansas Razorbacks. You got a loss against the Tennessee Volunteers coming back at home too. Nico Iamaleava is taking over that program at the quarterback position. Squirrel White comes back. Brew McCoy comes back. A lot of really talented defensive pieces led by James Pierce. Tennessee's the team that I see beating Arkansas this season. You get your first bye week of the year after that, and the struggles just continue because I have you losing to the LSU Tigers. I know LSU lost a ton of talent from last year, but I still really, really like that team, especially with what they have in the quarterback situation. You don't see this often in college football nowadays. Garrett Nussmeier has sat with this LSU program. He has patiently waited for his time, and now is his time. The folks around Baton Rouge really, really like him. I do too. I think he's going to be a really good quarterback here for this team. And the LSU Tigers, even though, again, that defense was not great last season, you did get Blake Baker coming in to be the defensive coordinator. Things should change on the defensive side of the football for LSU this season, where they will be much better. The offense will not be as dynamic and as explosive as it was last year, but it still has a lot of really good pieces. A game that I think Arkansas can fight in, but LSU does get the win ultimately. Then you have to go on the road and you have to play the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Now, again, Starkville, really tough place to play, but I'm just not in love with the Jeff Lebby hire. Mississippi State also lost Will Rogers. They lost a ton of talent offensively and defensively through the transfer portal. And again, the Jeff Lebby hire just didn't speak to me. Also being that team's offensive coordinator. Look, I know the fans in Starkville and those cowbells get really, really loud, but I think if Arkansas is going to want to pick up an SEC win this year, especially if you are winless in the SEC up to this point, it's got to be now. And I definitely think that it does pan out that way. Arkansas, again, is a team that I think is going to see their struggles this season. But they're going to go on the road. They're going to beat the Mississippi State Bulldogs. and then you just get 3 really tough games in the SEC the rest of the way. I don't think you're beating Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin's group is going to be really, really good this season. Jackson Dart comes back. There's a lot of really good talent on that Ole Miss team, and the defense continues to trend in the right direction. After your second bye week, you get to play the Texas Longhorns, and I know it's a rivalry renewed, but Quinn Ewers is one of the best quarterbacks in college football, and if Texas can fill in all the gaps, especially on that defensive line, you're looking at one of college football's elite teams here in 2024. Lots of good skill position players offensively that will just outduel Arkansas in every facet. They will be able to pick up a win, though, against the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs. They lose their quarterback, Hank Bachmeier, to a team that we're actually going to talk about in a little bit. No, not the Missouri Tigers, even though I do think you'll lose that game because their quarterback, Brady Cook, comes back, one of, if not the best wide receiver in all of college football, and Luther Burden is back, as well as a plethora of other weapons return. Defensively, yes, you did lose Blake Baker, and the defense probably will end up taking a step back, but just too many offensive pieces for the Razorbacks to handle with. Missouri killed Arkansas last year at home. Now it's a road game. I got Arkansas going 4-8 here in 2024. And likely, if that is the record to be at the end of the season, Sam Pittman is likely gone. Now, again, if Taylon Green can develop, some of the defensive pieces can sit in, Arkansas's got winnable games here. Auburn, if they don't really show up this year, yes. Texas A&M, yes. Maybe you pull off a surprise against one of these teams at home. But I just think it's going to be another struggle bus year for the Razorbacks in 2024. But I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Remember to play hard, but tailgate harder. And we'll talk about the Wake Forest Demon Deacons up next. Goodbye.